My God, we've never had one meeting so far.
Maybe I'll wear it. Maybe I'll wear it. That'll be tiny. There we are. Redesign. What a beautiful thing.
No position sees all 5 commissioners.
If you just go sit right down the middle. It's good there.
At our meetings.
You have a meeting?
Who's at our meeting?
Oh, gotcha.
Do you go?
I got a call from the lake and I'm on 45 minutes. And I thought, what time do you do? I had a full week. There's a lot of state parties. This meeting of the Livingston City Commission is called to order. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Copeland,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Present.
Commissioner Friedman.
Here.
Commissioner Sandberg,
Present.
Commissioner Mayhew.
Here.
Now we will have a moment of silence. Okay, please rise for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tonight we have 4 consent items. Do I have any commissioners that would like to remove or to pull a consent item for discussion or a motion by the commission?
I'm making a motion to approve consent items A, B, C, and D. Second.
We have a motion by Schwartz and a second by Friedman. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Copeland,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz,
4.
Commissioner Friedman,
4.
Commissioner Sandberg,
4.
Commissioner Mayhew.
Yes.
Motion passes. Tonight we have no proclamations and we have 2 scheduled public comments. Our first one is our Parks and Trails Committee, Representative Mike Gomez and Jean Marie Sauvigny with update regarding parks and trails. Please come to the podium.
Thanks. I am Jean Marie Sauvigny. I'm chair of the Parks and Trails Committee, and Mike Gomez is the vice chair. And so we wanted to give you an update about what we've done in 2017, sort of a year in review, and a little bit about what our priorities are for the coming year. And Mike created this PowerPoint, and so I want to thank him for doing that. The Parks and Trails Committee was created through resolution in 2013. We go by the Livingston Parks and Trails Master Plan primarily, and that was amended to add members a couple of years after that. And so we currently have 8 members. And Gavin is here today as well. I think that's the only other person on our committee that's here. Thanks. So I'm the chair, Mike, oops, just wanted to go through, because you appointed them all. Kate McInerney is our secretary. Carol Busey is probably the longest serving person on the committee. Gavin, who is here, Chris Newhouse, Greg Euler, and Darrell is our city commission rep. So I gave you a handout tonight that goes through these in pretty much the same order as this PowerPoint does, so you can see what our priorities have been for 2017. The O Street Connector has been one of our priorities for a couple of years, and we want to thank the city for also endorsing that. We are very glad that that received funding from the State Department of Highways. You can see a couple pictures here just how badly that situation is. We obviously want to connect O Street to the Veterans Bridge at the east end of town. So that's been one of our priorities for several years. Another issue is Mayor's Landing and Rosa Park. And we actually have an adopted trail committee, which I'll mention in just a minute or two about our adopted trail program. But Mayor's Landing, in trying to continue to ensure access, connectivity, safety, and maintenance, is an area of our priorities. And we attended the proposal by the Park County to get a bridge across the river. I think that's probably something that is a ways down the road, but there's a lot of interest among the people in town and elsewhere to be able to go to Mayor's Landing, go over the bridge and connect to Myers Riverview Trail. That's going to take a lot of money and take a grant. It's not in place now, but we're trying to support the Park County when they do that proposal. The Girl Scouts property is still an issue that we are trying to work with. Several people contacted us about these signs that we put up. That is Girl Scout property on the east end of, or west end of Mayor's Landing. We're working with them and have had a couple of meetings with them in the past year about trying to resolve this before this gets more contentious. They do have concerns about dogs going on the property and going over by the cabin when the Girl Scouts are there. So we're still working with them on that. The door is not closed. We'd like to get this resolved, and we'll keep talking about it. We're also looking at the property that is east of the transfer station. This actually came to us by a citizen who came before the committee, actually wanted to use the area. At that point, the city said it really isn't in a condition to be used. But we have talked with Mike, we talked with Shannon. In fact, Shannon came to our meeting last month to talk about how we might proceed if we wanted to figure out a way to use that area east of the transfer station for the public. It's a beautiful area, even though there's currently car bodies there, and there are transients that use the area. It's also been used for paintball. It's an interesting area, and there's also access over to the island if we could get that. So we went on a field trip to that. We went on a couple in 2017. We actually are still pursuing in 2018, and that will continue to be something we're going to see if we can resolve something. We know safety is the issue, and that's some of the car bodies that would take a lot of work. But we did it at Mayor's Landing many years ago, so we figured we can do that. We also got a citizen's request in 2017 regarding public use of the North 10th Street area. If you remember, when you're up on the hill, it dead ends in that little area there. You turned down a proposal to basically dispose of that land. And there was interest in making it park. We actually went so far as to invite the public to comment to us. You may have seen stuff, we did some media outreach as well to ask what people thought, and then found out after we went through that actually it couldn't become a park because after meeting with Mike, he said that's actually a right of way for the road. It doesn't belong, we can't just give it to a park, it has to go back to the adjacent landowners if we were to abandon it. So what we're looking at now, and we part of our work in 2018, is whether we can do a trail. There's still some interest in building a trail from Front Street up to North 9th Street, where there is not access now. Northwest Energy, if you look at that area, they use some of that right away along where the ditch is. And so we're looking at whether we could build a trail up that way. We've talked to Lisa to try to find out. We met with Dave. I want to say yeah, with the Ditch Association about whether we could use their right of way to get over to 9th Street and then build a trail up. And I've asked Lisa because Dave said the city, we should ask the city about whether their access agreement allows that to be used for a trail. So I've touched base with Lisa, and I think she's just waiting for direction from you on whether that's something you want her to look up for us. So that's something else we'll still be working on. We did create the Adopted Trail program a couple years ago, and I'm happy to say we now have 4 teams that have been approved by our committee. The top 3 have gone through a orientation with Eric Schneider with the city about what's needed on those particular trails. We have Mayor's Landing, M Street Park, and the Depot Center Highway 89 South that have all been adopted and have gone through the orientation. And LHC just recently adopted Elkinville and Myers Riverview Trail, which is great. So we're continuing to look for teams to maintain trails or parks throughout the city. We responded to a request from James Bennett to create a new off-leash area. He asked us to consider that. We again did media in the press and asked for the public to give us their comments on whether that should be an off-leash area. We did the site visit. There was a lot of support for doing it. And then we provided you the recommendation and you decided to recommend that it be an off-leash area. So our goal through this is to get through some of the bumps on these proposals so that you don't have to listen to all of them. So. We continue to support McNair Skate Park, and you're well aware of where that sits in this community, but they have a representative who comes to, usually comes to most of our meetings, and we obviously are hopeful that that will proceed. And Patricia is here. Patricia brought to the committee a request that we look at possibilities for developing the Bozeman Trail as an access through town. That's a little bit of a rough map, but it's the best one we had right now. So we met with Patricia, we did a site visit. I've approached Bob Evinger and one other person about whether they're interested in doing something like that. We are looking at whether, and I don't know, Patricia, whether that's still possible, we could have someone come and speak. The complication is there's a lot of property owners that are involved in that location. And so that is not a short-term project. That would take a lot of work if we were to ever develop it, but there could be some real historical interest in going that direction. So we're not dropping it, we'll still work on it. We have participated every year lately in the Parks and Trails Cleanup Day. This is some pictures of Gavin. I think Gavin's a couple of your kids are at home, maybe. And so we are still looking at doing Parks and Trails Cleanup Day. This year, however, one of the things we're working with is Park High School. The recycling cover, I don't know if they're called the Green Club now, or we met with them, and they're doing an Earth Day, day of service on April 19th. So what we're looking at is instead of doing a Parks and Trails Day, and because their whole high school would be out, we don't need to recruit more members of the public. We actually considered at our last meeting whether we wanted to do a Parks and Trails Appreciation Day maybe later in the fall, to do something different since we have this opportunity with the students to do the Parks and Trails cleanup. Last year, we also did the Katie Bunnell Park Improvement and Dedication over at the M Street Park. Mike had a really big role in that because we also combined with Arbor Day to do some work at that location. So, and the city put in some trees, and it was a really nice event there. Mike fills a lot of roles. He's with the tree board. And then Mike was also involved in this, maintenance at Homer Mountain Trail up on the hill, built a new picnic table, and then re-gravelled some of the paths up there. Yeah, gravel, sorry. And then Mike, in his free time, also built it. You know, we get a lot of credit for Parks and Trails because of Mike's. We'll take it. He built and installed 3 new picnic tables at the 3 grills at Secretary Park. He just looked around and said, you know, we've got grills there, but nowhere for people to sit if they wanted to use them. So he built those. Got some grant through the community closet, and then also a donation from Livingston and Harbor. And then Mike can also speak to this, but the Legacy of Faith Ministries contacted the city last spring, I guess it was, and said they were going to be coming into Livingston and looking for projects to do. Mike took it on and he worked with them. They built 10 redwood picnic tables. They provided the materials. He got additional materials from Livingston Ace Hardware. Daryl Brunson, yeah, Daryl's right here.
Stand up, Daryl.
So, yeah, good thanks to Daryl. We got another project he did here. But it was great to get that volunteer labor and volunteer materials. So very much appreciate their involvement. And the other thing they did was they helped restore the Parks and Rec ticket books.
These are really in bad shape. They asked us to paint them, and we looked into, you can't paint pictures like that. Basically, throw them apart, rebuild them, and paint them.
And I think you're coming back this summer, is that right?
Oh, we're here all the time,
Yeah,
but we
okay.
do have teams here.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
And so I know at our committee meeting, we've been thinking about projects. There's no lack of projects. And then another one of Mike's projects is the ongoing work at the band shop, which you probably have noticed. So before and after pictures. Mike, did you want to add any?
It was pathetic.
And then these are some of the other things we've done. We're trying to also work with the county and the Active Transportation Committee on joint projects that we may have interest in. We supported the changes they did at the farmers market. Then we met the Tennis Association. They're interested in a building next to the tennis courts. That's not advanced very far, but that's still on the table. I met with Dave Pettit to look at the safe routes to schools, and we're trying to look at how those existing safe routes get on maps so people know exactly where they are. We had a lot of meetings with Mike and Shannon and Eric and others, as well as the planning board approached us about their change to the parkland dedication requirements, which we ended up supporting. We also accepted responsibility for oversight of the Secretary of Statute Fund. And then the Northtown developers asked to meet with us about potential trail maintenance near their proposed project. That's just on hold until something happens there. But our interest was the trail that goes by their property. And then for 2018, we're looking really at continuing some of those same projects. We're not looking at adding some main new ones. We want to continue to see what happens with the O Street connector and make sure that moves forward, offer input where we can. We've asked to be kept up to speed on that. Continue working at Mayor's Landing in Moser Dog Park, the transfer station in Sackett Park, North 10th Street, adopt a trail. We occasionally get citizen requests. We don't know what they'll be, but we try to respond and see what it is we can do to answer those questions or suggestions. Work with the county and continue on trail connectivity, safety, access, maintenance, and improvements. So that's our priorities as well as our activities in 2017. Any questions about any of that or suggestions? So there's one more slide, you said?
Synopsis.
Synopsis. Mike is very proud of the bottom picture because that was one of the things he had identified as a maintenance need last year because the bench that was on the left side had disappeared. And the city maintenance crew is just great about responding when our committee or anyone else, I think, has identified things that need repairs, and that was one of them. And then there was a pipe that was sticking up, 2 pipes sticking up out of the ground at the water plant there that we also mentioned to them, they went in and leveled it to the ground, so it's not a safety hazard that we thought it was.
And we can thank Shannon Holmes for doing that. He was at our meeting, we discussed it, and next week they're out there marking it, digging it up and fixing it so it wasn't a hazard. Things stuck up about, one of them stuck out about this high from the ground, you know, just enough to catch a sled or whatever. And so it was kind of a dangerous situation. They fixed that, and now it's kind of safe for that. The city guys have been super nice about working with us. It was super great. We got a great team working out there. They call them the Roman crew. Eric Snyder is supervisor, Jim Mayo, Mike Frederick, and Bill Jones. They're just kicking it out. Shannon is up there making sure that anything we bring up, they take care of. So it's been great. It's been a great effort. And Daryl, thanks for everything.
Absolutely.
And this spring we're going to be building 10 more tables for the
Depot board.
And so we're working with Park High School for lately what we've been doing. Also met with Stephen J. in the chamber about a new map that would show trails and parks for both the city as well as the county, and we'll be moving forward with that as well. Any questions, comments, suggestions?
Good job.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jean Marie. I have to, I'm part of that committee, but they're the hardest working committee I've ever worked with. So they get a lot done and very effectively. We appreciate you. The next public comment tonight is Carla Pettit with the Urban Renewal Agency regarding URA bonding recommendations. Carla? Oh, and Bob.
Second.
All right. So back in, I think it was November, we were tasked with putting in a recommendation. The URA is going to sunset December of 2018. And the URA was set up to try to go along with the CIP program. So the CIP is in, I don't know what year it's in, but it's not close to its end. And the Urban Renewal Agency, or the TIF district, is nearing its end. And we would like to see that extended. And the only way to extend that at this point is to bond it. And so we were tasked with coming up with a recommendation. We were given 3 different recommendations to look at. One was a 15-year, one was a 20-year, and one was a 25-year. And the committee, through a lot of discussion, we have come up with a recommendation of the 15-year bond to continue the URA. At that time, it matched up pretty good with the completion of the rest of the CIP project. And so we chose 15 years for a couple reasons. Not wanting to see the program, the project done, which is the CIP project, and being able to help out the building owners with helping with the expense of their sidewalks is one of the main things. And then at the same time, at the end of 15 years, then the monies will go back to the respective county, city, and school district. So that's our recommendation at this time.
That's debt, 15 years.
Yeah, and it all, of course, and it also had to come to debt service, and we got out of the debt service a lot faster with the 15 years than if we went with any other commitment. And it doesn't really leave the URA much money to spend on the only program that we are continuing at this point is the facade program. That's the only one that we're going to continue to support. And really, this project does not even leave much excess for that. We've been notified about increase in sidewalk costs, which is going to bite into some of the, calling it an excess, but in some of the additional funds. And we also have some residential areas are not in the CIP project. So those people pay into
the UR into the TIP district. And so we need to make sure they get the assistance for new sidewalks as well. So those two things we feel are going to take the monies that will additionally be generated through bonding. So that's our recommendation at this time.
So we're at a point of just scheduled public comment, and then we will discuss this in the action item for anyone interested in coming to the podium. So anything else from Bob or Carla? Okay, great, thank you. Tonight we have one public hearing, and it's the final reading of ordinance number 2068, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, establishing a civil offense of interfering with the street sweeper and establishing a penalty. Mr. Cardew.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, this is the second reading, so there were no changes from the last reading. There were some corrections to align with what we said before. The main differences in the change to this ordinance are the time period, 4:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. That aligned with the actual operations of the street sweeper. It changed the times a year that it was that we were able to ticket for the times that we actually have street sweeping operations going on, which in this case is May, June, July, and August. And the last change was to change the maximum penalty for interfering with the street sweeper from $20 to $100. So those are the main changes.
Great, thank you. So I will open it to public comment first. Please state your name and address.
Don Platek, 229 South Yellowstone. I hope we're all in agreement that this ordinance is really trying to accomplish one thing: clean the streets. So, I like it. I just would like to make sure that it's something that's enforceable and well-defined. Because, you know, some of these things are, they're intangible, but tourists come into town and, you know, they leave town and go, but what a nice town. And sometimes they don't really know why, but clean streets, well-maintained homes, it just has an impact on people. So it make them want to come back. So great, get the streets cleaned. But my concern is, it seemed like from the wording, it can still be arbitrary if the citation is issued. And all that will lead to is not a clean street. So can I get some kind of confirmation? Is it arbitrary or is it a ticket if it's in violation?
So I don't think I'd use the word arbitrary because I think that has some connotations that aren't exactly true in this case. It is a violation. It's like any other violation. If it's noticed, if it's confirmed by the the officers, they will be taken. There is discretion, as you know, if your car is parked out front and the officer's coming up and you're outside, and you're like, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to move it, and you move it out of the way, the street sweeper, and we can still clean the streets, we're not going to ticket you because, as you said, the intent is to be able to clean the streets. And so that'll be the focus. So the officers do have some discretion, but it's in cases where you can still clean the street.
Okay, as long as the streets gets cleaned, because if it doesn't get cleaned, what did it accomplish? So here's kind of the monetary part of it. I'm not heartless. So come this May, give people a warning. But then come June, issue the ticket. And then if it's a repeat offense, tow them. Again, if you don't enforce it, we don't get our streets clean, tourists come to town and go, what a dumpy town, dirty streets, I'm not coming back. It benefits everybody to clean the streets. And who it also benefits is that person who is issuing the citations. If it's clear and measurable, they do a great job. And at the end of the year, go, perfect job. We gave you a clear and measurable objective. You met it, they get a raise or whatever. So I hope that you consider that, and it is in there that clear and measurable, get the streets clean. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
District Greg over 204 East Calendar Street. I loved the article in the newspaper today that said, I'd sure love to have you clean the streets in between snowfalls. But there is time in the winter in which we have a lot of, there is no snow and it's pretty warm and we can clean the streets up after putting sand on our streets. And I think that's a really important thing, that we just not limit this to the summer. Number one. Number two, I'm sorry, but the city is pretty unpredictable. I tried last year for the first time since I've been here, and I've been in that building, in the Grable building, for the last 20 years. And it's the first time I actually got the street cleaned in front of my place in 20 years of so-called street sweeping. And I made a big sign, because there are no signs, to let people know. And I don't know if they're gonna have signs out for this, but I think you need signs if you're gonna find people. And I put a big sign, and I tried to follow exactly what I was given in the mail from the city, and then the city changed its schedule. And so I put these big signs out, everybody moved their cars, and then the street sweeper did not come. So the city has to bear some responsibility for this. If they don't live up to their schedule, then people begin to not trust that they're going to be there the next time. And if they don't put out signs, and it's up to, like in my case, the building owner to put out signs, the city's got to do its part in this, and I don't think it's doing it adequately. And I don't think necessarily it's planning to do it adequately. Plus, abandoned cars need to be towed away. And they will interfere with the street sweeper. I just think we'll try it this year. We'll see how reliable the city actually is, because it hasn't been in the past, and we tried really hard. We put out signs. I contacted everybody in the building, said, please move your car, and I even knocked on people's doors, and then the city didn't show up. So that's a problem. And I hope that the city doesn't do that again.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Bob Evinger, I live at 128 South Yellowstone Street. My question is clarification from what the newspaper said today. They gave a real complicated website and probably off my chart as to where you could locate the map. In the past, you've sent the map out with the water bills. Do we intend on doing that again this year?
Mr. Cardings.
We do.
Okay, good. It's just the newspaper didn't clarify that. They just said you have to go on the website and take a look. So that's my only comment.
It is on the city website, and it's pretty easy to get to. Check out. It's the new city website. It's much easier to use than the old.
Well, the one that they had in the paper was like very, very long to get to it.
If you just go to the main page and go to Public Works, it'll be right there.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other public comment? Maya?
Hi, my name's Jan Lucanville. I'm the owner of the Main Street Emporium, along with my daughter, 202 South Main Street. I would like to see certain times of the year when it is as quiet like it is now. We're not having a big snowfall and that. The street that we do business on is connected right to the senior center. So we have a lot of traffic coming in and out of the senior center almost every night of the week. And usually on Sundays, there's something going on. I would like to see the street sweeper, at least if they can, clean that street up sometime prior to the months that you guys are saying, what was it? May, June, July, and August. Like right now, it is messy, it's dirty, it's really an eyesore. We have a lot of traffic coming through now, even tourists are coming through. And I'd like to see that cleaned up a little bit sooner than not. And that's just my suggestion. We're proud of our downtown area, we're proud of our town. And that is an eyesore. I go out there and I clean up as much as I can. But I certainly can't remove the dirt that's there and the sand that's there. So that's just for consideration. Thank you.
I do have a question on that, Mike. I did notice the street sweeper was on Park. Are there other streets that are just having an earlier cleaning because of higher? Was it ours? It looked like ours, so I thought it was our street sweeper. No.
So, as far as this ordinance is concerned, it doesn't limit when you can sweep, it only limits when you can take it. The problem with sweeping out of season is that it requires an MOU with the union to change the hours of work for the workers. So it's not as simple as telling the guys to get out there. You actually have to negotiate an actual MOU with them to get the hours available. And additionally, since it sounds easy to do a street, but this is how many days does it take to do all the streets, Sharon?
2 weeks.
Yeah, it's a 2-week process. So it'll be 2 weeks solid of a different schedule. So it's difficult to do it outside the time frame that we set up.
The folks that actually do it have different job descriptions, different times of year.
Yes.
Okay.
Sonia Talanka, 102 South 8th Street. I would just like to comment that I have no problem moving my cars for the street sweeper, but my problem is the hours of 4:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. because I live near Marks In and Out. And so even if I move my vehicles for the street sweeper, if the sweeper has not come by the time I leave for work and I can put my vehicles back, employees of Marks In and Out or customers of Marks In and Out park there anyway. So the street sweeper is still not able to clean the street. I've already been out once to sweep up I'm sure people in the neighborhood think I'm crazy because I get out there with my push broom and clean it up myself. We do a very good job. The street sweeper operator has even told us, thank you for doing such a good job keeping your gutters clean. And so what about people like me?
Sure.
One way to solve that problem, do that in Bozeman, is they post signs the day before. Are we gonna do that this year?
We do. We have sandwich board signs we put out. But I think that the key thing for you and most people is
I know where
obviously
she's at, yeah.
once the street sweeper goes through, you can move back in. If the street sweeper isn't through, I mean, it's a 12-hour shift. It is 12 hours of the guys out there sweeping. So it's hard to.
A few years ago, he used to come early. He would start on our end of town and then work towards the river. And that worked out great because he would come by. I could go move my cars back before I left for work at 8 and it was beautiful. But the last couple of years, I think he started on the south end of town and worked north. And so by the time he gets to Calendar Street, Mark's is open and it's lunchtime. And so you've got lots of employees and customers parking around in our neighborhood.
Hopefully the intent of this ordinance will be people will know not to park there. And, that's the intent, is to make sure that people understand that they need to be out of the way when we come through.
And the signage should help.
The sign should help, and I think the fact that it'll be enforced a little more strenuously than.
Would it be possible to start on the north side of town and work south?
I don't know what the realm of possibility is as far as the actual street sweeping goes. The problem is no matter where we start, it's not gonna work for someone. Because it is a full day of sweeping. So trying to figure out each need is going to be difficult. But I mean, I can see if it makes a difference. But my guess is that it's built that way for a reason. I just don't know what the reason is.
It would certainly be more helpful to start near Mark's because of the business in the afternoon. If you could get that done before they open, it would certainly be very helpful. And I would also like to mention that the street light on the corner of 8th and Calendar has been out for about the past 2 years. And I call and they come and put a new bulb in it and it lasts for about 2 weeks and then it's out again. So it'd be great if we could get that fixed too. Thank you. Any other public comment?
Ron Tlamka, 102 South 8. First off, I'd like to thank the commission for having a public hearing where the residents can voice their concerns. First off, I fully support an increase in the fines. My main question is the enforceability. We've lived in that house approximately 25 years. In previous years, you would see the street sweeper and a police officer or two following behind it to ticket the vehicles. I'll admit I got ticketed once. After that, I took it seriously. Nowadays, the street sweeper comes by after you've moved your vehicles, does half a block because there's still cars there. So no one's going to move them unless you strictly enforce it at least the first few times. My other question too is, if we start at 4:30 a.m., you're not a resident of that neighborhood. The small signage, is that going to keep people from coming in and parking on those transitional streets? I know we have a unique situation being located where we are in Nathan Calendar with the commercial things. I think the city needs to look at a transitional residential to commercial zone about how we deal with those streets. It affects us, it affects Calendar, probably all the way down to here. When we came to the meeting tonight, the back lot was full. We weren't sure the front doors would be open. So we did the cardinal sin in my book. We parked across the street in front of somebody's house who doesn't have a driveway such as us. So let's hope they're not going to be infuriated if they come home from work or evening out and have to deal with it. But I think the city needs to look at some plan for the transitional streets. I consider Calendar the division between commercial and residential, and we're the buffer line between semi-blight and commercial. And reading in the Bozeman paper, around the university, they issued residential parking permits. I know it's a big jump, a big leap for a small community, but I think in the future we need to look at something to safeguard the residents. We don't want to see Calendar Street and then maybe Lewis start to deteriorate. You know, the first deterioration is going to become, large number of rentals, and that can spread and add to somewhat to deterioration of property values in the blight and deter from the downtown area. Where we live, we get a lot of tourists in. And the one comment, talking to them when I'm telling them not to park in front of my driveway is that how nice it is and how clean. But, that can go away pretty fast. But I really hope the ordinance is strictly enforced and that the city in the future looks at some plan to draw a line and say, this is going to be commercial zoned, and this is residential. Managing a business, I understand the importance of employee parking. I think that in the future too, I know it'd be a hardship for some, but the businesses need to come up with off-street parking for their employees.
Could I just clarify, if you want to make more statements on the parking, which is definitely an issue, because we're on an ordinance and we're talking about the ordinance, if we could focus on that, and like I said, I appreciate what you're saying. But going back to the ordinance and we vote on the ordinance or the decision, so I'd appreciate it.
Okay, then in closing, I say I support a fully enforced ordinance. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any last community comments? Commissioners? Sarah?
So we heard a common theme with the community about enforceability.
Thank you.
And I think we have a lot of ordinances on our books that we don't enforce, which has been an issue. So I know, Mr. Curtis, that you're restructuring the ordinance officer position, but yet somebody can't monitor parking, street sweeper, all at the same time, empty trailers parked. So what is going to be the city's, I mean, from what I understand, we're gonna have a new city ordinance officer, but that person can't do it all. So what's the plan for enforcing our ordinances that we have? And the priority, I guess.
Well, so no matter how many people we have, we won't have 24-hour coverage of every ordinance. I mean, it's just impossible with the number of ordinances and the number of square miles we have to cover for that. So the idea is to target enforcement. I would almost call it small pushes on each item, because you don't have to enforce it all the time. You just have to make everybody believe you're going to enforce it all the time. And so as long as there's a consistent and unpredictable pattern to which codes are enforced when, you can have a larger effect than just the actual ordinances you pass out. So part of that is looking at the ordinances and deciding which ones should still remain, and if they are to remain, how they should remain, in what manner, so that they are enforceable. So part of it is rewriting the code to be, I would say, more easily enforced. But part of it's going to be to determine what the priorities are. And I think that's going to be situational. Obviously, street sweeper operations will be a priority when they start. But once you get a habit pattern established, then you can look at other items. You know, parking in the downtown area will be a priority when construction starts, because there'll be limited parking. So you hit the areas that you really need enforced at the time. You make sure you catch a good smattering across the rest of the items so that there's at least the perception that there will be consistent enforcement. We'll be able to catch everything. At some point, especially as as we have more residents or more area, we'll have to look at additional personnel positions to help with that, whether that's part-time during high traffic months, whether that's full-time over the full year. It depends on the cost and the efficiency you can do with that. I think we'll get at least a year with the new structure to see what it works and see where the holes are, and then we can look at what else is needed to ensure that we're enforcing things correctly.
Thank you.
Would you remind everyone when the ordinance officer will
So
come on?
the ordinance, there will be, in addition to the Livingston Police Department, hopefully, we have to go through the hiring process, but hopefully they'll come on board in July of the new fiscal year. They'll have to go to the academy after that, so we'll be in a way while we get them fully up and running. But then there will be a duty position, so it's not going to be a new hire specifically that will conduct the code enforcement, but there will be a position kind of like the school resource officer that's a duty position that we will fill with one of the police officers, and that will be their primary duty. Doesn't mean no one else can do it, it just means that that will be their primary duty. It should also help in enforcement with some of the other city agencies, such as the animal control officer, the building inspectors as they go out. When they need assistance from the police department, they'll have someone that's experienced that works with them that should be able to be a little more efficient in our enforcement across all the agencies and not just the code enforcement specifically.
Thank you. Any other commissioner comments?
Yeah, just a comment, with this new ordinance with the street sweeper. Hopefully that will take care of a lot of trailers and campers that park on the street. That's what my hope is. Because that ordinance is that's on what's already too as well. So kill two birds with one stone, but I'm looking forward to it, and especially, I think signage is a big, very, very important. Not everybody's going to get the schedule, and works well in those when keep the signs out the night before the parking on Tuesday, and collect them from there. So I'm anxious to see it happen. I wish we could start sooner too. I'm tired of the dust. Thank you.
Any other commissioner comments? Okay, do I have a motion for ordinance number 2068?
Move that we pass ordinance 2068.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Maybe and the second by Schwartz. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Copeland,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Four.
Commissioner Freeman,
Four.
Commissioner Sandberg,
Four.
Commissioner Maybe,
Yes.
Motion passes. Tonight we have no ordinances. And one resolution, we have resolution number 4786, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, authorizing the city manager to sign a general services agreement with Castle, is that how we say it? Castle, Inc. Mr. Curtis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This agreement in its entirety basically replaces our current accounting software, which is Black Mountain Software with Cassell Incorporated. This has been an initiative we've been looking at over the last 6 months. Really was brought about by some of the shortfalls in the current accounting software. It's extremely hard to generate reports, so trying to get information out is difficult. It's not very interactive, so there's a lot of processes we currently do that are manual and require at least one manual entry, sometimes 2 manual entries. So we looked at what other solutions were out there. This company had the best offer for us. They came in, did several presentations. I think some of the key, it is a more expensive solution than what we currently have. So it's not a cost savings initiative, but I think in the end it will be a cost saving initiative because it will cut significantly the amount of man hours we are currently using to do a bunch of the accounting functions. I think a great example of that is currently our W-2 generation is a manual process. Our accounting software actually will not generate the W-2s for our employees. The new software will. Budgeting is another area where the current software is a manual process. So we're currently undertaking the budget for next year. We actually have to print out sheets, distribute them to the department heads. They have to manually write in any changes to the budget. Those are then collected back up, brought back to the finance office, and have to be manually inputted into the Black Mountain system. It's pretty labor intensive. It's rife with errors between the trying to decipher someone's handwriting on the sheet and then trying to input it in. The new software will actually allow each department head to access the software from their own computer, enter any changes to the budget in the software directly, and it'll be automatically updated in the main system to the finance office. Additionally, it'll allow me to have my own personal dashboard of things that I want to see that are happening in the budget. So I'll be able to pull it up on my computer and be able to more closely monitor the things that I think are important. Additionally, it'll give each of you read-only access as well to be able to get in and see anything specifically you want to see up-to-date, real-time in the accounting software. So it's a lot easier to be transparent. It's a lot easier to make sure that we can pull the data we need. It also has functions for timekeeping, functions for document management. We may be able to eliminate our current document management software. We'll have to take some experimentation and see if we like this one as well, but it could save us some money maintaining that software. So we're actually just trying to roll it in, making it much more user-friendly, much more automated, especially if we can get the automated timekeeping piece down. We currently do all our timesheets by hand. Everyone does them by hand. They're all collected. They're all brought back to finance. They're all manually inputted and then checked from there. So it has a large potential to save quite a bit of man hours that we can then focus on other areas. It does cost quite a bit to, as any software, it does cost quite a bit to actually install and get set up. Luckily, this particular company has not entered the Montana market yet, and they are very motivated to enter the Montana market. So they agreed to spread the cost of our conversion over 2 years, which will allow us a little easier path to cover that cost. Additionally, the agreement comes with training for our staff. I think that is the main thrust of it. You can see on page 63 the actual cost. For FY18, we're looking at about $26,000 cost, 55 in FY19 because that's both operating and the second half of the conversion cost, and then an annual cost of about $38,000. That compares to approximately $24,000 right now that we pay for our current software. So it is an increase of a little over $10,000. However, our current software cost has gone up consistently year by year. So in the long run, while it costs more, I think it's better.
I have a question right away off of what you said. As far as moving from the one software to the new software, what is the timeline?
So one of the things we did is we scheduled the actual conversion for the middle of the fiscal year, not the beginning of the fiscal year. So we would start this process now, and they would start a conversion process with the data. They'll have to go in and get all our current data transfer it to their system or their format. That'll take about 6 months. And then, so in the middle of the fiscal year, somewhere in the December, January timeframe is when we'll actually change the software. When we're out of budget season, when we are through most of it, at least early rush. And then in the meantime, we'll get our training done. So it'll probably be offsite training. We'll go to them, send our employees there. They will get trained on the actual software so they know how to use it. And then start the installation process sometime in December, January.
Thank you. Any public comment first?
Don Platt, 229 South Yellowstone. I deal with this stuff a lot, so I'm just curious. I haven't read this, but a lot of times when vendors come in for the first time, warranty, they'll extend several years of warranty at a really reduced cost. Don't know if you looked at that. A lot of times they'll perform upgrades for you for a few years. I don't know if that was in there, but maybe things you could hit them up for and save the city some money.
Any other public comment?
Yeah. Jay Keeper. I was just 345 South Main. I was just wondering, have you just heard, have you seen this in operation, or are you just listening to a spiel as far as what the system is supposed to do or can do?
So we've got a demonstration of the system, an actual live demonstration of the system, as well as talk to other customers who are using it. They are in, how many states are they in? 10, 14?
I don't remember.
They're in, it's a fairly large market. They're out of Salt Lake City. They cover most of the West Coast, almost through the Mississippi. We've talked to other cities that have used the software, and it performs as advertised.
How long have they been in business?
A long time, 20 years.
So there's a good chance that this, product B, there was in existence the same time as the existing software was available, or was it?
Don't know. I don't know when Black Mountain started.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Commission comments or questions?
I just, so is it just, how many years are we locked in at that price? Annual, I mean, it's a per license.
It's per license, and it's just like Black Mountain, it's year to year. So we'll have to renew it every year.
And then I just noticed in reviewing this about what's included, X amount of employees, X amount of this, X amount of that. Do we know what those fees would be if we jump those thresholds?
I don't have that data on that. Do you know, Paige?
Not on the concurrent users, I don't off the top of my head.
And it wasn't just concurrent users, but it was in the, what is it? 30 data conversion is, 3,500 meters, 1,000 vendors included. I guess I'm just curious if 150 employees, so if we ever exceed that, do we have to pay an extra fee? Or is that just for a fee based on the setup?
I think that's the fee on the setup, the conversion cost.
Okay.
I think the standard software, you pay per module, and it can cover however many users you need at that point.
Okay.
We probably do pay for user licenses. So it would be, if
Right.
we have more people that we need access to the system, we will pay more for that,
Right.
but not more, say, utility billing users.
Okay.
Once you have the utility billing module, you can put as many users as you want.
Okay. And I thought I saw, and maybe I made this up, which could probably definitely be the case. Something about the old data. And I think they said there was an additional fee if you wanted to get reporting off of your old data. So I'm guessing, I know that they'll throw our accounting system in there, they'll throw our accounting codes and our current balances, but if you wanted to do historical references out of the financial system, are we losing all that data, or do we have to run 2 programs, or how do we do that?
That data will be there, it just won't be accessible by their reporting format, so it'd just be a manual.
So it's data we're going to maintain.
Yes.
But we won't have Black Mountain. So it'll basically, what do we do? Data dump in Excel or something to keep that?
It will still be there. It'll be in the system. It's not going to be accessible. It's not going to be indexed. So you're not going to be able to search it with the software. You can go back and manually look through all of it.
Okay.
But you can't pull it out in reports or queries. So it won't be automated.
Okay. I'm just trying to think if, what we do if, audit purposes or something that entails us to have to backlog some sort of financial information to gather and give to somebody, how we would access that.
Well, we'll have access back how many years, you know?
You know, they bring in, I think, at least 2 full years worth of data, and then, and like he's saying, an unformatted history of things prior to that. They're not gonna bring our data back from 1995.
No, I
But I'm just wondering
what would be our procedure? if Somebody were requesting that,
For the 2 years, we're good. Beyond that, it's gonna be.
just a manual. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Any other questions from the commission? Well, on ordinance 4786. Do I have a motion from the commission on resolution 4786, not ordinance, sorry. Oh, we don't vote on the resolution.
I'll make a motion that we pass resolution 4786.
Get a second.
I'll second.
Right. Motion by Friedman and second by Navy. Roll call, please.
Excuse me, Chairperson Hosmer,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz,
4.
Commissioner Friedman,
4.
Commissioner Sandberg,
4.
Commissioner Maybe,
Yes.
Motion passes. Sorry, I flipped things around there for a second. Tonight we have 2 action items. And our first one is to discuss, approve, deny Urban Renewal Agency's recommendation for 15-year bond. Mr. Curtis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is the continuation of the public comment that the URA provided us. Just from the city's perspective, from the staff's perspective, we think that's the actual agreed recommendation is a 15-year bond. However, I would ask that tonight you pass or you vote on whether or not, in this case, to bond, but leave out any actual conditions on the timeline and or the amount. What I would like to do is once we are sure that we want to bond, we'll get together with bond counsel and we'll sit down and see what the most favorable terms are. And we'll make a decision if we want this to be a standalone bond or if we want to roll it in with part of the city's bonding issues. So I would ask that you do vote on whether or not to bond, but not on the actual length of the bond or the amount of the bond. And then I can bring back a recommendation after talking to bond counsel to make sure that what we have is feasible from their point of view and also gives us a favorable rate.
Thank you. First, we'll open it to public comment on the Urban Renewal Agency's recommendation as a 15-year bond. Any public comments? Commissioners, any comments or questions? Warren.
Before we vote on approving, I'd like to know, and maybe this has all been gone over before my time, what qualifies for a URA, what type projects qualify for a URA grant, and also if, because in other towns, I know it works this way, rather than a flat out grant, there's, it takes the form of a very low interest loan, and restructuring or structuring the money dispersal in that kind of a format. And again, that might have all been gone over before January, but I'd be interested in hearing that information before agreeing. Thank you.
Mike, would you like to address that?
I would. So it's a great question, although I'm going to limit my response to just the bond because it's different depending if you're talking about the bond or if you're talking about any tax increment that's collected above the requirement for debt service. So the total amount of the bond, one of the nice things about bonding is it will be dedicated to the downtown streets project. Because when you bond, you have to say what that money is going towards. So all of the money from the bond will go towards the downtown streets project, whether that's, if the URA decides, that could include the skate park, the sidewalks, and then the loans to the business owners for the other half of the sidewalks. So the way it's currently intended to be done, and it will depend on the bond itself, is URA will pay for half of the costs for the property owners for the sidewalks, and they will allow them to borrow the other half or finance the other half of the sidewalks. So that will be what the bond money goes to. They don't have an option to use it for any of the other projects because once you bond, then it's tied into that specific use. Thank you.
Other questions, Warren?
So, clarification. So I think in the presentation with the 15 years, it was 1.5 million basically, and then they were estimating 900,000 for the sidewalks, which I know is a very old estimate. It says it was from 2011. But for the sake of argument, we'll use that. That would roughly leave 600,000 left over. So what can they use that on?
So the rest of it is intended to be used, and I'll make sure I get this correctly. The entire amount of 1.5 million will be used for the downtown. The 900,000 I think is just the half portion. So it would be the other half of the loan.
So by bonding, we will not be being presented by the URA with, I mean, Carla made reference to facade programs. That will not continue then?
It will continue if there's, so this is where it diverges from just the bond money. The TIF is still increasing. If tax values goes up, we have allotted a certain portion of that to the debt service. Anything above that is available for standard URA projects as always has been. The projections are there won't be much of that for at least the first 3 to 4 years. Because we're taking almost all of the tax increment to pay the debt service for the first years, it's like we're starting over with the tax increment. Theoretically, you could have as much left over in year 15 as you did in the year 10 of the first TIF. Extra depending on how much the taxes go up. But that's all dependent on the tax area. And then those would have to be brought back in front of the commission through their programs.
Okay, so I was, sorry, I have a different question. So I think when this discussion happened with 2 bonds, which started last fall, I remember that we had a couple work sessions with the URA. And what was brought up with the commission was having a clear delineation of, I think what Warren is alluding to, those extra funds, what they will actually be used for. And I think it's important, it's important that that's delineated and defined. I think prior than for me voting on bonding, I would rather not vote until we have that language defined and agreed upon. Because one of the biggest struggles we have is the interpretation of the document. The process, I mean, we do have an elected official, appointed officials to make those decisions, but again, members of the URA whose the tax funds are going into the program, is everyone on the same understanding of how those funds are going to be used? And that's caused a lot of, I think, confusion for multiple levels. Thoughts?
So in the URA's presentation, I think what they're saying is any additional funds will be used for only 2 programs. 1, the facade program as currently it exists, and 2, the residential sidewalk program. So those would be the 2 uses for extra funds. Obviously, there's still the incidentals like the flower basket program, which is ongoing. But those would be the main focus of those funds, would be either facade programs for downtown businesses or sidewalk programs for residential properties.
And can you define what's included in facade?
It should be just the front, I can't give you a technical definition, but it's both the structural and cosmetic front of the building.
Okay.
So that would include windows, that kind of thing.
Not roofs or solar panels or?
No. So the energy program was a separate program, and it's not looking to.
Okay. So is there a reason why we need to vote on bonding tonight and why we can't wait to approve and pick the appropriate time frame once we receive information from bond council?
I think the big issue is that there's other things we're going to have to decide in this process, and we have to be completed with the process by December 18th. So by December, we have to be done if the TIF is going to continue. But there's still other issues once we decide that we're going to bond.
Such as?
Whether or not we're going to include it in a city bond, how we're going to plan to disperse those funds inside of 3 years. There's a series of other decisions that need to be made. not necessarily saying it needs to be made tonight, but it does need to be made fairly soon so that we can continue with the process to make sure we finish it by December 18th.
I guess I function better understanding the big picture and all the moving parts and parameters before I make a decision. I don't want to approve something and say, yes, we'll do this, and then 3 or 4 months down the road get provided 4 options of proposals that I'm not agree with in any of them, and then I'm stuck because I voted to do the bonding. So the parameters and the details to me are just as important in making the decision personally. That's my opinion. I want to understand what I'm approving, not just that I'm approving bonding, but what that bonding looks like. And also, I guess, from the URA, have you given a survey to current property owners in their input on how they feel about continuing with the bonding? Is there a pulse besides just the membership of the 6 people that usually show up at the meeting?
So, we haven't done anything as far as a survey. We have very strong interest. I mean, we've talked to many people. To pay for 100% of their sidewalks, there's nobody downtown that can do that. The original URA was started to coincide with the CIP project. And so our year number 1, and it didn't quite match up because we started a little bit before the CIP was to start. But as I know it, we're doing this summer, part of this summer's work is what was in year number 4 of the CIP. And so we have helped business owners out with their sidewalks. And we have, just like we're offering to do, with 50% we're going to pay for and 50% we're going to finance. I've talked to many business owners. There's not a one who can pay for their sidewalks outright.
This is her property.
The property owners. But they're also, the ones I've talked to own the building and own the business that's in the building. So no, there's a formal survey has not been done, but there's been a lot of talking that has been done.
Thank you.
Yeah. And as long as I'm up here, the only programs that the URA supports is just what Mike said, and is the sidewalks. And then if and when there's money left over, we'll continue to support the facades. And those are the only 2 that the current board is willing to support. There's a huge document that says what we can support and what we can do with that money. And moving forward, we'll be very limited, especially with the increase in the cost of cement. And also we have that huge, not a huge, but there's a residential area that is not included in the CIP. And I believe that cost that we've been given is about $800,000. So that's going to be a huge cost of anything that, because of the bonding, the increment that is increased will cover.
Thanks. So I think, yeah, I mean, I think I'm in support of looking forward into the program, but I don't want to approve bonding without knowing the criteria and stipulation of the details, and having it clear defined as well that, you know, it will be for sidewalks only, and additional funds will only be used for facade. You know, as Carlos stated, we have a current board that shares a view. That board can change, and so I think it's important to have how we envision those funds being spent documented, and that's what we're approving on. So I would like to vote on it once we have the details delineated and provided to us to vote on the entire package.
Any other feedback on that statement as far as waiting to vote on it as far as details of the bond and how it will be presented, or currently making a decision on the bond in general with recommendations coming at a later date? I think that's the 2 places it seems that we are at. Any other feedback from the commissioners? Mhm.
Well, just looking, knowing the broad doctrine of the URA, so we're looking to change that and during this bonding period specifically to decide residential sidewalks within that TIF district. How would we go about doing that? Because you're at the, I guess, will of the boards before we get to understand where Sarah's coming from.
So the requirements for what TIF can be spent are stipulated by state law. The commission can probably limit that to a subset.
Yeah,
if you
can't
so
we,
desire.
that's what I'm at. Yeah.
You know, at least one of the benefits of it is all those need to come before you anyway. So you certainly can only improve the ones that you want. That's your definition, no matter what the documentation says. Because you are the final approving authority for any of the money spent out of that fund. So I don't think it would be part of the bond initiative. It would be actually changing the core documents of
That's what
of the URA itself.
But since we have the ultimate, say on how the money is spent anyway. No, that's true.
It's good to have that stuff delineated, so the
Well,
spirit
then
of
you
what
would
the
have to
approval
change the
is.
core document. It sounds like.
Can I-
So, the one thing that was said was this board that we have for the URA right now, that's our intentions. But we could change too. So can the city commission. So can everybody sitting here. And that's been part of the problem in getting the CIP done, as well. So, we chose the lesser of the bonds, to not be greedy, but to accomplish what we believe the URA was set up to do in the first place, which was to assist mainly in the sidewalks of the downtown area. And we were able to do some other things as well. But the biggest of those, and the one that has made the biggest difference for us, is the facade program. I mean, if you look downtown right now, you see some pretty great changes that we've seen in the last 2 years. So whatever it takes, if we need to go back and say that, I think the intention of our presentation earlier was to say that we're going to use it for sidewalks, and we're going to use it for anything left over, which truly, Mike said maybe in year 3, 4, and 5, we might have something, but truly, we might have something left over in year 12, 13, and 14, and 15. I mean, that's what it's looking like now with the increase of costs.
Warren, did you have something to say?
Well, I'd really still like to see almost a laundry list of what qualifies. And I'd also like to see probably a financial cap on what any one project can be allotted. It's a lot easier to have something in black and white as a guide rather than guessing and winging it. So yeah, I'd like to see those criteria again in black and white.
So are you asking criteria of
What qualifies
for
for a
grants or for
URA?
the bonds?
No, for a specific URA grant
Okay.
or a URA loan. And I'd like to see it by item and also by financial amount.
Any other comments on that or questions? I feel like we're at two different issues. And I don't know if we need clarification or if anyone can help clarify. I don't know if it's Bob or Carla or Mike. But are we, as far as the bonding issue, what is the advantage of this? I want an answer as what is the advantage for us to approve or not? the bonding of the URA.
The advantage is to the downtown building owners.
So they will then have access to partial funding or half funding for their sidewalks for the improvement.
Yes.
And if we don't bond, what is the,
And the total 100% of the cost of sidewalks.
So there's a couple issues. The first issue is that if we don't bond, the URA goes away, the TIF goes away. So the city gets that money, the school gets the money, the county gets their portion of the money. However, the business, the property owners get nothing. So they would be forced to bear the full cost. In actuality, what would happen is they would be forced to finance that with the city. So the city would be forced to front that entire amount of money to the business owners because by ordinance, we are required to loan the money for sidewalk improvements to property owners by the terms and rates set in the city code. So if there's no TIF money to pay for the sidewalks, the city will have to come up with that money out of a different source, which probably is going to either require us to bond ourselves or require us to delay the project because we don't have that kind of cash sitting around to cover the entire cost of the sidewalks from the downtown. So that's the issue of bonding versus not bonding. Is really just when you're talking bonding and not bonding, you are talking the sidewalks. That is what you're talking. We're talking the sidewalks to go along with the downtown street projects. Either that money is available to the property owners to use in the construction, or it's not, and then they will either have to pay it out of pocket or finance it through their property taxes. It would be then assessed on the property taxes. So that's the issue of whether or not there's a bond. The issue of what the URA money can be spent on, I think, is a completely separate issue that probably should be addressed separately on going back to revisit the core URA documents that already exist, because there's already black and white guidelines on what can be done. Now, whether or not we agree with those guidelines is a different question, and if we need to alter those documents, then we can go back and look at those separately.
So I do have the guidelines for the, this was the facade and energy efficiency program. We have dropped the energy efficiency program, but we do have guidelines. And when the board looks at something, we look at giving them what it does say up to 50% in here, and many of times they do not get that. I mean, it's rare that they get that, but we look at a payback that by property tax increase, that payback is a 10-year payback to the TIF district. And so there is, if we give somebody, well, we gave the guest house a pretty big lump sum, and the increase in taxes, as we looked at them, as were projected to us through an outside firm, was in 10 years that would be paid back to the URA with the increases. And that's what we look at when we decide to give out, whatever monies there that we have available to work with. And so that we have a payback in 10 years. And that is very typical of the other things that we've read in other documents that we've had throughout the years and when we visit with other towns and cities. So.
Thank you for the clarification. Did that help any and all commissioners for the morning?
I wasn't questioning the rationale of the bonding. That's not my question. I understand the bonding and benefit of it. My question is having bond counsel provide to us the options, documenting clearly if we are going to bond, we're going to do the side, not just have a casual conversation. I mean, granted, the bonding will say you have to do the sidewalks, but we actually have a document that states the only program we're going to review for the life of this bonding is the facade program. We don't have any documentation on that. All I'm asking to is approve the entire package deal, not approve it piece by piece, and then, approve bonding, and then we come back with bond counsel, and, nothing looks favorable, and then we're stuck because we already approved to bond. We have plenty of time for bond counsel to get us information prior to December 18th. I mean, we have 8 months, 9 months, and that's plenty of time. We've done bonding before in 3 to 4 months. So I don't understand the urgency of making sure we approve the bonding tonight and do the details later. I don't understand why we need to do that. I would rather see it all together and we just approve it in one shot.
Well, the bottom line is you're approving a process and you don't have any real borders on it. And in terms of the topic that was just brought up, the guest house pretty much drained a huge percentage of the URA money. That's why I think that there's no question about the program being a good program. In terms of the sidewalks, in terms of any CIP project, from a small business background, I'm more accustomed to going to a bank and getting a loan for having something done or purchased than I am from getting money from the city. It's not even like the free money from Washington that comes from a far distance. This is out of the pocket of the business next door. And as such, I think the emphasis should be that money goes back to the business next door. And in a maximum specific amount. You can talk about 10 years from now, but in the meantime, if you're drained dry, it doesn't mean anything. So that's why I'm asking for a really specifics. And again, a financial cap being prime among them as to what the URA can allot to any one business.
Then we need to look at the core.
I think we have somewhat of Bob Ebinger again on 28 South Yellowstone Street. When we're bonding only predominantly going to go toward the sidewalks. I mean, they're saying now that probably we have maybe, any money left over for any other projects. It's going to be maybe 10 years down the line, conservatively, with the increases of concrete, which went from $12 to $18 to $20 a foot. So there's no money for us to have any other programs. What we're saying is at the end of the CIP, at the end of the bond, if there's any money left over, we'd like to continue our programs. But remember, the programs gets approval by you. None of our funds are not approved by you. And I would like to caution to blaming the loss of money and drain of money on the project that we did with the apartment buildings downtown. Because the biggest drain on our money came from taking on the responsibility of the undergrounds and paying for all that, which originally was not part of our mandate. But we took that on because the property owners couldn't afford to do it. So we helped them do that too. So there's been several drains on our money that were not originally anticipated. But we do have money. We have enough to qualify for the bond. If I'm not right, Mr. Cardos, we have to have so much money put aside in order to bond, and we have that. And we put a moratorium on any additional monies to be expended. So we really have, and if you want to look at what we can do, it is written out in the document, which I think all of you have had copies of, as to what we can do. If you want to limit it, we limited it down to facades and energy efficiency. We found now that in energy efficiency, we're going to discard that, and we're just going to go with the facade when there is money available, which is way down the line after we pay for sidewalks downtown, finance 50% of it, and then gone to the residential areas that are not part of the CIP, but paid in to the tax increment financing. We're going to pay for all that first before anything gets expended on any other projects that they come out in URA. So I don't see the problem of saying we're going to bond because there's safeguards here. I mean, it's committed. It's, if you look at the CIP and the yearly amount for the CIP, it takes all of our money. There isn't any money left. The CIP is taking all of our money. And if we use the first 3 years of a we bond, it all has to be paid within the first 3 years. So that's gonna cover the debt service, I guess, Michael was talking about, as well as the cost of doing the project. So I don't see why we're worrying about what other monies we're going to have. There isn't any more money. It's all going to the downtown improvements.
Thank you, Rob. Any other questions or comments from the commission? So we're at a place of 2 places. Either approve the bond as recommended, 15-year bond as recommended by the URA, with recommendations to come in the future. Or second thing is, my opinion, maybe more than anything, is that we approve or request, I should say before approval, request that we have more information on the recommendations from the city before we make the decision. So Mike, as far as the recommendations, what would that timeline look like?
Depends a lot on what the entire package is looking for recommendations. And I'll throw another wrinkle in, just because I want to make sure we're all thinking the same way. If we don't vote to bond tonight, then by the 27th, we won't know if we're bonding or not. So then the skate park will not be constructed this year. That goes away. Unless we plan to float them away, which we said we would not. So
we need a commitment on bonding
to move forward.
Yeah, for the URA to be able to bridge that loan if they do decide to.
Yeah, we don't even have that approval yet. I mean,
No, we don't.
The URA hasn't approved it.
No.
they'll meet tomorrow. The other option would be if they met tomorrow, there's no way I'm having a full recommendation for you before the end of next week.
No, but I guess I'm just gonna voice my frustration of, you know, being thrown in these positions where we're asked to make these decisions without having the full information. I mean, I don't know of anyone who's ever approved a bond without looking at an amortization schedule and a bond schedule. I'm not familiar with that process. This is now being linked into the skate park. The same way at the last meeting, we were provided an option to have the URA float a loan for the skate park without the respect or professionalism to discuss that with the URA before it came before us to make that decision. You know, I don't like functioning, I guess, in this environment of having half the information thrown at us and being asked to make a decision. And then giving, you know, an ultimatum of, well, now you have to do it because the skate park depends on it. I'm just not comfortable with that.
I fail to see where we don't have the information. This seems pretty straightforward to me. So, and time is of the essence. So, I'm looking at it so in a totally different way. I think everybody's been up front to kind of know where we're going, and let's get going. Just make it.
You know, the whole reason a lot of this came about is because we're trying to find a unique solution to a situation regarding the skate park and a creative way to try to get it done this year. I don't know that anything's. Yeah, we've been put under time constraints for that reason. But if we want to, it seems like this is basically our only option to get the skate park off the ground this year. That's going to happen. with the, URA's approval to bridge that loan. Yeah, that's not normal, perhaps, but I don't have a problem with recommending bonding at this point.
One of the other issues is the issue of 50% coverage that I think is a big worry for me as far as helping finance with the downtown owners. I know personally, when we bought our house on Yellowstone, that summer they were finishing up the sidewalk. We couldn't even move in, and we paid for that 50% or not 50%, 100% for the sidewalk improvements for that time. 5 years, I think is what it was. And so I know that's a concern for other people and for these business owners for not having that as an option. And bonding is really that option that they have for support. I don't see any other support, financial support that can come to the business owners other than that. Am I missing anything? So that is a concern for me. And when I focus on the bonding issue, that is the first thing that comes to my mind as far as the importance of bonding, so that we can move forward with the CIP and with the plan that URA's plan, which is to help with the sidewalks. So, it is a tough place to be tonight as far as information, feeling like a little more, but if I put that issue at the top, it's a little different. Any other comments? Any other comments from Mike? So we could start with the motion by the commission.
I make a motion, we approve urban renewal agency recommendation for a 15-year bond.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Freeman and a second by Schwartz. If we want the options within that motion, do we have to say it now, or if we want options added to that motion, do we have to state it in the motion?
I think as far as what you're approving tonight is the concept of moving forward with the bond for the URA. If you want to change the details down the road, if you want to change it from a 15 to a 17 year, it's within your purview to change it. Once we come back with the actual, once we put in all the other aspects of it.
That you're trying to put together.
You still have a flexibility to change it, yes.
So we don't need to have any recommendations added, or you come
You
with
can
any
do that.
recommendations, okay?
That can be assumed.
So we have a motion made by Freeman and a second by Schwartz. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Hoagland,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz,
For.
Commissioner Freeman,
For.
Commissioner Sandberg,
Against.
Commissioner Maybe,
I'm gonna vote for, because I don't want to penalize the building owners downtown. I also don't want to penalize the skate park. I think there's too many loose ends as far as decision-making in the URA.
Yes, so motion passes. Next action item is discuss schedule for next strategic planning meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Unfortunately, there's not a lot to discuss. The local government center got back to me. We don't have any dates available right now. Being down, a person has limited their scheduling. So Dan's gonna go back and look and see if they can maybe free something up. I said we could probably finish it May 9th.
I think so.
So he's looking to see if maybe he can rearrange his schedule a little bit and get us some nights for people. Yeah, so they're down. But once he gets back to me with his availability, or if he says there's nothing available in April, then I'll get it for him in May. But we're still working to see what we can find.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission? So next on our agenda is public comment. Any public comment? Nothing? I feel like tonight would be a great night because people had a lot of things to say. No public comments, any city manager comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will assume from the conversation that you'd like me to put URA core documents on an agenda. So, is there?
During
Yeah.
commission comments, I was going to say, let's bring that back on.
So we at least know what's in it and then.
I'm adding the bonding options, obviously, when that is ready, as far as what that looks like.
Well, I would say the next step forward in that is going to be decide how we want to expend a bond in 3 years. Do we want to also align the city with that and try and finish the project in 3 years, which would require a total bond? Or do we want to find a different way to expend the URA funds in the first 3 years? Because by bond law, you have to spend all the funds in 3 years. We obviously aren't going to spend the entire amount on sidewalks in the first 3 years if we don't change the way we're doing the project. So we would have to come up with a different way, which means that we'd have to bond against different parts of the project. And URA would have to pay for sewer or street portions in that first 3 years to expend all the money. And then the city would be on the hook for sidewalk portions in later phases. Those are probably the next options we have to decide, because then if we're going to bond 2, then we can join the bonds, get a better rate, and look at it and get everything done in a 3-year time period. So that's probably the next decision that needs to be made. We'll get that on the next meeting as well. We'll get both of those on because that will determine where we go from there with bond council.
Great, thanks. Is that all tonight?
It is not. I have one more comment. It's just informational. The county invited me last week to go to Helena with them to speak to the interim government subcommittee at the state legislature. It's a great subcommittee. The main topic of discussion was, we call it a gateway tax. Doesn't exist yet. It would be a proposal to the state legislature to kind of mirror a resort tax, but with some different parameters, i.e. it could be done by county, and it could be done in any geographic area, not necessarily just within resort areas or resort communities. So the intent behind the county's proposal was to shift the tax burden from residents to tourists for essential services that tourists are driving. So whether that's emergency services, infrastructure. So it is a concept that would allow a targeted geographic, temporal, and goods and services tax that would have as little impact on the current residents as possible, that as a component of it would have mandatory property tax relief, and then would be customizable by the county with some input from the municipalities that exist inside the county. It was a good conversation up there. The subcommittee is very well informed. They had a lot of good questions. They have agreed to put it on their working plan for the next legislative session. So there will be another presentation by Park County in July when they meet again as a subcommittee. So if there's information you would like on that or input you'd like to give to that, that is something that we probably need to schedule as well, just to see what your thoughts are. That's all I have tonight.
Share comments. Warren.
I think I've made them all.
Sarah.
We discussed at a recent meeting about getting the plaque for Eileen for doing the flowers, and I spoke with the woman today, her name's escaping me, who brought this to my attention, and I also spoke with Mike, who I think we're going to do the presentation on the first meeting in April. If we could keep it a secret, And this woman has a plan of getting Eileen down here. Her kids are going to be here. So, and if the paper could not put that as an agenda item, she's still here.
She's probably watching the recording, so wait.
Oh, was she not here tonight? Okay.
No.
Well, I'll send her a text message or something. So anyway, just if we could keep them on. And I guess just a question that I had in regards to the current county levy that the county commission approved to put on the ballot. And looking at the video that is, I guess, kind of a promotional video and answers questions. I'm wondering why the spokesperson is the city manager and not the county commissioners.
So I would call the video educational. An educational video would probably be the correct term.
Sure.
To stay in line with state law. That was a joint project. They asked us to sit in on it, and I think they didn't want elected officials speaking. So since I was an appointed official, they said, would you mind talking about it?
But it is a county levy.
It is county levy.
So they couldn't have county employees or, I just.
If there were county employees.
If you were to look at it, you would think it was a city based levy. So I just would think that the spokesperson for a county levy should be a county employee, my opinion.
Is that all? No?
I was asked by Quentin to take his place for the listening session last week. And Darrell and I were there. We had a nice attendance from the public. During the discussion, Michael McCormick, the head of the food pantry, said he would like to hold a breakfast for the entire community on April 28th. Part of this is, I've been on the commission for 6 years. James was on for 8 years. You could probably line up a bunch of people and put the commissioners and the city manager up there, and they just wouldn't know which one is which. I just a gut feeling. So this is an opportunity where we can have the city manager, the city commission, the public, the Park County commissioners, and display them, and so that the public can look at them and see who they are. So I think it's very kind of Michael to do that, and with the necessary fanfare to get the word out. But I think that I appreciate him doing it, and the eggs and whatever will be served, so it won't be on the food pantry. So, looking forward to it.
Yeah, it'll be on Michael specifically.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you have a time
Yeah, did you guys discuss a time? Mike?
I don't think we did, but we thought
I see, once it
around
goes sooner
like
than later.
but the normal time of our meetings, like around 8:30.
Yeah.
The breakfast would start, but it's on the 20th.
Oh,
We already came up with
We should establish a date.
oh, what, April?
April 20th. This-
Yeah.
I think there was a,
The second Saturday of the month.
yeah, but we couldn't do that.
Oh, you couldn't do that?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just the alternate.
There was some
Well, I need to know that.
conflicts.
Yeah. And we had a very good discussion from the public, and a lot of good things came up, so I appreciate people showing up. All yours.
Yeah, no, thanks for taking over more, last minute. It's nice for everybody to join in
You'll get the bill next.
and host and do it. It doesn't have to be just one person. Other than that, I don't have any.
So can you notice, or you put that on for notice, that breakfast, please?
What was the time again?
8:30 a.m.
Okay.
On the 28th. I'm looking at my notes. One issue that has been brought up over the time I've been on, and that's the wayfaring, is that how we say it? Wayfaring,
Wayfinding.
finding, there you go. Signage, and if there is any feedback or comments that we know of that could address that issue, I would like some answers on it. It feels like it's been on people's minds for about 5 years. So I'm not sure if there's any plans moving forward. Sometime the idea was potentially looking at funding it or part of it at some point, and working with the state. So I don't know. I'm putting it out there. I don't have answers. I guess I have more questions, but
I thought that was a done deal.
yeah, I don't know what happened to it. During that meeting, we had it brought up about possibly paid parking as an option for some of the parking issues downtown. Some concerns about the one-way changing the flow onto being second was something that was also brought up. It was stated that there's 300 and something apartments downtown that we're dealing with parking and parking problems related to that. I think that is it. My last statement is just from one of our community members saying that they had a light that they had called in on. I'm sorry, I forgot your names. It starts with a T. I remember that.
Sonia Talanka.
Philanthropist. Yes. What is the best option for them? It's been fixed and they have called in the past, but should they just continue to call, or what is the possibility for their solution? Mike.
Well, I think the possibilities, we'll take a look at it. That's one I'm not familiar with, so we'll have to look at it. If it's a light problem, it's not a big deal. If it's a lamp problem, like a street, the entire lamp portion, then it's a different problem. If it's consistently burning out, it might be a street lamp problem, not a light problem.
Is that Northwestern Energy or is that us?
It depends. It depends on which one it is. That's a whole other subject, but we'll take a look at it.
So calling the city offices with concerns and then seeing where to go with it.
And shortly on the website, there should be a link to report problems. There'll be an organizational box email where you can report a problem by email. And that way you don't have to try and catch somebody in your office or worry about finding the right person. You can just send an email to the website and then be directed to the correct department. But give me a couple weeks to figure it out.
I'm done, so I entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
we have a motion by Schwartz and a second by Friedman. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting of the Livingston City Commission is adjourned at 21. Oh, no, yeah. That's great.
My friend. Oh, I drove it down on the weekend. Let's go do it today. And let's do it again for a second. Thanks, everyone.